This photo has a terrifying backstory. In 1991, Jared Negretti was 12 years old and he was on a Mormon scouting trip in California. The boys were hiking Mount San Gorgonio when all of a sudden Jared disappeared from the group. A huge search and rescue team was deployed, which is kind of hard on this mountain because it's so steep. At first it seemed like a total lost cause. There was no sign of Jared, but then later that night, one of the search and rescuers found his camera in a bush, and on it were a bunch of photos that Jared had taken while he was separated from the group. This was the last photo on that camera. For years, people have been trying to make sense of this photo. Does he look scared in it? There's a flash on it, so maybe it was taken at night. But this was the last thing that was ever found of the boy. He was never seen again after this.
They executed this serial killer the same way he killed over 100 boys.
Okay, so we all know that serial killers really never get what they deserve. They either just get the death penalty or they just rot away in prison. But the serial killer that I'm about to explain to you got exactly what he deserved. This is Javed Iqbal. And from 1998 to 1999, he murdered and raped over 100 boys from the ages of 6 to 16 in Pakistan. He would rape his victims and then strangle them to death with an iron chain, and then cut their body into 100 small pieces and then dump it into a bucket of acid. And the most mind-blowing thing is, he did this to all 100 boys he murdered. Javed Death was then sentenced to death by being strangled by an iron chain, then for his corpse to be cut into 100 small pieces, and then his body to be thrown in acid. And they did this in front of all the victims' parents. They killed him the same exact way that he killed over 100 young boys in just a year. Keep that in mind, this all happened in just a year.
5 children vanished on Christmas Eve after their home burnished to the ground, so why were their remains never found? On a cold Christmas Eve in 1945, a fire destroyed the Sauter family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. What happened to the 5 young children inside remains a dark mystery. That December 24th, parents George and Jenny Sauter escaped the raging fire with 4 of their 9 children. Tragically, the other 5 siblings, ages 5 to 14, were never seen again. No remains were found, and in the aftermath, George bulldozed the wreckage searching for bones and bodies. Nothing was ever uncovered. Ominous clues emerged, like the home's phone line being cut earlier that evening and a stranger's threats against the home. And for decades after, the Sauters desperately pursued clues on the missing children through private investigators and even psychics. But it seems that the 5 had vanished that Christmas Eve night, their fate haunting the Sauters forever. The disappearance remains one of America's most disturbing unsolved crimes. Now, if you think that's bizarre, severed feet wearing shoes keep mysteriously washing up on beaches. Don't miss the next story for that freaky tale.
5 pictures with creepy stories. Blanche Monnier, locked in an attic by her mother for 25 years without sunlight. When discovered, she was covered in old food and feces, with bugs all around the bed and floor, weighing barely 55 pounds. Jim Jones. Jim Jones receiving a Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian Award. A year later, he would lead his followers to the largest mass suicide in history, claiming 900 lives. The Lawson family. Taken 3 days before Christmas when Charlie Lawson, second from top right, murdered everyone in the picture, including himself with a shotgun. Final footprints. Final footprints of a 4-year-old girl that drowned in the pond pictured behind. Mark Jackson's basketball card. In the background are the Menendez brothers sitting courtside after they killed their parents.
Confirming that a body found.
The body of a woman reported missing late last year has been found.
No one had seen or heard from Lauren Giddings.
Anybody could have been the killer.
We call it the smell of death. Only a monster could do something like that.
And Lauren isn't even answering texts.
A girl named Lauren decided to lock herself in and focus and study, focus on her career. She tells her family this. Her family was like, okay, good. But her classmates, as time passed, noticed they didn't see Lauren at all.
A friend of ours texted me asking when's the last time I had heard from Lauren.
She didn't study at the library with them. She always studied at the library. She wasn't there. So one of the classmates called her and texted her. No answer. One of the classmates then gets worried, so she tells the sister, hey, is your sister okay? I haven't been hearing from her. I'm kind of worried. Is she good? The sister said, oh, yeah. She said she was going to lock herself in and study. Everything is perfectly fine, right? One of the classmates hearing this knew in the back of their head that something ain't right. She's worried. As time passes, she keeps calling her and texting her and calling her, but no answer. She then calls the police and say, "My friend, I'm very worried of her. Her name's Lauren. Can you go to her house? Here's her address and check up on her, please, for me?" One of the police gladly goes check up on her house, knocks on the door. No answer. Goes around, check the windows, no signs of break-ins. All the windows are sealed. He can't physically go inside the house until they file a missing persons report, so he leaves. As time goes by, still no texts from Lauren back, no calls from Lauren back, and she still doesn't pick up. The family then gets worried and files a missing police report.
911, teacher emergency.
There's some guys who's gonna kill my mom and dad. Can you come?
What happened? Where are you at?
North Rock, California.
Okay, what's your name, sweetie? What's your name?
Carlos.
Carlos?
Yeah.
How old are you, Carlos?
Good.
How old are you, hon? How old are you?
Can you come really fast, please?
Can you tell me what happened?
They come, they ring the door, and they have guns to shoot my mom and dad.
Right now?
Yeah. Can you come really fast? Bring cops.
Okay, listen to me. I have them coming.
A lot of them.
Listen to me. I have them coming, hon. Listen, okay? Listen to me. Take a deep breath. I already have the police coming.
I'm really old too.
Listen, hon. How old are you?
7 years old.
Okay, 7. Listen to me. Where are you at in the house?
Inside the bathroom.
You're in the bathroom? Who's with you?
It's my sister.
How old is she?
6 years old. Can you come really fast? Hurry up.
Yes, stay on the line with me. Don't hang up. Listen to me. We're coming to help you, but listen to me, okay?
Okay.
When you were in the house, tell me exactly what happened, okay? Just stay where you are and don't hang up whatever you do.
Okay. They bring the guys, they have a...
Hey, we need deputies now. We have a home invasion, and he's saying that they shot the mom and the dad, and their 7-year-old was screaming 911 in the phone. Yes, but they just broke into the bathroom and took the kids.
These guys found what looks like a serial killer's hideout. YouTube channel Explore With Us visited an abandoned property where they would find a shed holding a horrifying secret. As they look inside, they noticed the wall behind the shelf didn't match. And when they pulled on it, they found a hidden passage. They find a secret room with a ton of disturbing items. First, he finds a chair with someone's coat on it, and next to that, there's containers full of ammunition. Now, when he goes to the other side of the room, things get weirder. He finds a bunch of hardcore pornography and soundproofing walls. He also found bottles of liquor, ropes on the ground, and a cabinet with strange chemicals. Underneath the staircase was a hole, and inside that hole was a toothbrush, a torn stuffed animal, and some jewelry. After that, they found an old surveillance system and a creepy abandoned van. The team mentions this is all illegally built on public land and is in the process of being removed by land management.
I was stuck under a massive rock in the middle of the Grand Canyon and ended up cutting off my own arm to dodge a sure death. I'm Aaron Ralston, a thrill seeker who went missing for a scary 172 hours. On that day, a huge stone was blocking my way, and I tried to climb over it. But I put my weight in the wrong spot, and when I tried to step over, I started a rock slide. A gigantic rock, about 500 kilograms, fell right on my arm. I let out a shout that just echoed back at me in the empty valley. People often say it's a great place to hide, but if you're in trouble, it's the worst. Pain and fear were making me freak out. My face went all white as the pain fractured my bones. I tried to use my Swiss Army knife to move the rock, but it was no use. I was 10 meters up, and every move I made could drop my stuff, which was my only hope. I tried to chip away at the stone, but it was useless. Then night fell, and the temperature dropped close to freezing. I was in a really tight spot. Finally, after 5 days of barely hanging on and living a nightmare, I knew my last shot was to cut off my arm. I started by cutting through my skin, then the tendons, veins, and crushed my bones. I used my spare t-shirt as a tourniquet. I walked for miles before I ran into a couple of Dutch hikers who waited with me for a helicopter. After that intense ordeal, my story didn't just end there. It grabbed Hollywood's attention, and a movie called 127 Hours was made based on my harrowing experience. The film's vivid portrayal of my survival story has touched millions around the world, bringing a whole new level of realism and respect for the will to survive.
Tiptoe by the window, that is where I'll become tiptoe.
This little girl got revenge on her killer from beyond the grave. On the 25th of January 2005, Katie Coleman finished school and went back to her home in Indiana, United States. Katie was 10 years old and lived with her mum and dad and sister. At 3 p.m. that day, her mum asked her to go to the dollar store to get toilet roll. Now, Katie knew the area well and it wasn't really far to go. After getting the toilet roll from the shop, Katie stopped at the bank to get a lollipop for her way home. However, when Katie's dad returned home, the little girl still wasn't back. Her parents called police and a few days later an Amber Alert was issued. A witness came forward to say that they'd seen a girl who looked like Katie in a truck. The driver was described as a skinny white man about 6 feet tall with short dark hair and fair complexion. Tragically, 5 days after going missing, Katie's body was found. It was in a creek just a few miles from her home. Disturbingly, her hands and feet were tied and she had been SA'd. It was determined that her cause of death had been drowning. 20-year-old Charles Hickman rang the police to confess. He said he and another man had abducted Katie after she'd witnessed a substance deal. He said they tried to scare her into not saying anything and they tied her up, but she ended up falling in and drowning. Disgustingly, this turned out to be a false confession. This obviously wasted police time and caused massive amounts of distress to Katie's family. Police continued to look for evidence and they did find a cigarette butt near to Katie's body. They tested it for DNA and it matched a man called Anthony Stockelman. Police compared the DNA on the cigarette butt to the DNA on Katie's body and it was a match. Anthony, a father of 2 young boys, was in the area that day visiting his mother. He entered a guilty plea and was given life in prison without parole. But this is not the only punishment that Anthony would receive. Now, Anthony claims that he was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance during the crime. He said this is because his father had died 6 months prior. Regardless, Anthony was imprisoned. Unlucky for Anthony, he was actually housed in a prison with Katie's cousin. Jared Harris was serving a sentence for burglary and was in the same wing as Anthony. Jared forcibly tattooed the words Katie's Revenge across Anthony's forehead. He wanted to brand Anthony for life for killing his young cousin.
Mum, can you just pass my drink that's on the table, please? Thanks.
I'm going to warn everybody right now, the case that we're about to cover is easily one of the most disturbing true crime stories I've ever heard in my life, so viewer discretion is really advised for this one. This is Kevin Davis. He was 18 years old back in 2014 when this horrific event took place. Kevin lived here in Corpus Christi, Texas, and shared an apartment with his mother, Kimberly, and his sister, Destiny. On May 26, 2014, Kevin snapped. He had been having homicidal thoughts for a long time, but on that particular day, he decided to bring his dreams and his fantasies into reality. On that morning, Kevin told his mother, Kimberly, that he wanted to unalive himself, and she told him that she couldn't stop him if he wanted to. After hearing this unexpected response from his mother, Kevin went into a rage. He grabbed a cord and attempted to strangle his mother on the couch where she was sitting. But his mom, Kimberly, managed to fight him off, and in a panic, Kevin went into the other room and grabbed a hammer. Now, this is where it gets really disturbing, so if you're still here with me and you have a weak stomach, don't keep listening. Kevin then bashed his own mother's skull in with the hammer, hitting her at least 20 times. And he then grabbed a knife from the kitchen and inserted the knife into the head wound. At that point, Kimberly's head was opened up, she had a massive head wound, and her brain was exposed. And Kevin stuck his hand into his own mother's head and played with her brains. He later told detectives that it felt like putty. Now, after his mother was dead, Kevin dragged her corpse into another room and which is unbelievably shocking and disgusting. After all of this was said and done, he went to a neighbor's house, told them to call 911, told them that he had just murdered someone, and he was arrested without incident. When Kevin ultimately arrived at the police station, he was brutally honest with investigators about his crimes. I listened to the entire interrogation, and I cannot unhear some of the things that he told investigators. It's vile and shocking. But at one point, he smiles at the investigators with a little grin and says, "Yes, I guess I lost my..." to a corpse. After his trial, he was handed down a sentence of life in prison. He's still alive. He's still in Texas right now. And he even admitted to investigators that if he was given the chance, if he were out on the street again, he would kill again. I'm sorry to have to fill your guys' minds with this stuff, but this is a truly disturbing case that I can't stop thinking about because of how horrific it is. And yeah, I cannot believe that this happened.
This is a story of one of the largest kidnappings to ever happen in the United States. This is just going to be an overview. If you want all of the details and the full story, go listen to the latest episode of my podcast. On July 15th, 1976, in Chowchilla, California, bus driver Ed Ray picked up a group of 26 students after they went on a summer class field trip. As he was on the route home, he noticed a van stopped ahead, and he tried to maneuver around it, but when he realized it wasn't moving, he came to a stop. Then, 3 armed men got out of the van and forced their way inside the bus. They then drove the bus to meet up with another van and made all of the kids jump from the bus to 2 separate reinforced vans like this one. They then drove the kids and Ed around, locked in the back of these vans in the sweltering summer heat for 11 hours. One of the men also abandoned the bus in a drainage ditch and covered it in debris to try to conceal it. After driving around for 11 hours, they arrived at a rock quarry, which was about 100 miles away from Chowchilla. There, they forced Ed and the children to go into this underground truck trailer that they had buried 12 feet underground. Inside, they had put mattresses, some food and water, and turned the wheel wells into toilets. Once everybody was inside, they covered the top with a heavy metal object and then began piling dirt on top of it. And as you can see, the roof started caving in. Ed was doing everything he could to keep the younger children calm, some of which who were just 5 years old. After about 12 hours, Ed realized that they needed to do something to escape, so they stacked up the mattresses to reach the top. And that's when Ed, along with one of the oldest students, 14-year-old Michael, began trying to move whatever was on top of this hole. It turned out it was a manhole cover and 2 100-pound industrial batteries. Eventually, they were able to move it and were able to dig their way out. Ed then helped all of the kids escape, and they took off looking for help in the rock quarry. Eventually, they found someone who called police, and when police arrived, the kids were so happy. They took the kids to a local jail to be able to evaluate them and give them food and water, because this was the closest place that could house all of them. And eventually, the kids were taken back to Chowchilla to reunite with their parents. Ed Ray was an absolute hero, but the only problem was they did not know where or who the kidnappers were. Eventually, they started looking into the son of the owner of the rock quarry, Frederick Woods. And they discovered that him, along with 2 of his friends, Richard and James Schoenfeld, had recently been arrested and paroled. They got a search warrant for Woods' property and found this document that said plan that detailed exactly what they were doing. They also found this list of all of the kids' names that the kidnappers had written down. Go to part 2 for an explanation of why they did this.